there's a sparkle in your eye. When you add the ice and lime, you start to cry. If I loved you anymore, I swear I'd die. But you need a stronger man, not some wimpy guy. But baby, when the thought was you're a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in daylight. You origin and where it's going to get you through the N-I-G-H-T. But baby, when the thought was you're a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in daylight. You origin is where it's going to get you through the N-I-G-H-T. Baby, what do you say? Those awful words for me. Come on, girl, come on, let it lie. My wounds need time to heal. But the gin, it knows you better than I do.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Adam Steele here as always, and tonight we are live streaming again, doing more mixing. I've actually put some text on screen today. Probably best move that over a little. And we'll be carrying on the mix of this song Gin by Banana Ranch. So far it's got a very kind of slightly ska influence, and we've got all these backing vocals to add in. We've got all of these gang vocals to add in. Then we can start thinking about adding in all these guitars. So this is where we got to previously on the stream. We mixed in the drums and the bass, the most basic rhythm guitars, even though there are loads more to go. Saxophones, trumpets, main vocals including doubles. Made sure we had our effects ready, room reverbs, plates, delays, slapbacks. And here we are again. Tonight I'm drinking Camden's Pale Ale. Feel free to drink along with the stream responsibly if you are of appropriate age. But do not feel obligated to do so. Hope you're all well. I think now's an appropriate time for me to run the intro. So, let's crack straight on, he says, as he thinks. It's worth mentioning to you all that the course that I told you about last stream, which was Guitar Tone Mastery by my friend Scott from Chernobyl Studios, is on sale still for the next 3 days. Excuse me, that Camden Pale just went, whoa, straight to me. It's live. These things happen. And so if you want to learn how to get really great clear tones out of virtual guitar amps, I can show you what I do, but Scott's really, really good at showing you step-by-step methodical processes of how to do that with a mentality and a practice regime, which is really good. He shows you with free amps and cabinets right the way through to some of the more premium stuff. But you don't need any particular gear to use for his course. And yeah, so it's usually $150 for this course, which is a lot of money. But it's currently on sale for $77. And if you click the link that I give to you, and I will find my link to drop in the chat. If you click my lovely link, and that's going to put all my text up on the screen, so I'm not going to do that. That is an affiliate link, so if you do decide to buy a course or any of the courses from that site, that helps us out as well. So that is kind of it's not a paid product placement, but I really like Scott, and I've been watching the course, and it's really good, and obviously it helps us out if you do decide to buy it. So hey, evening all, evening. So, as everybody is piling in, shuffling into the theatre, as it were, welcome everybody once again. It's time to start looking at many vocals. Because last stream, we looked at our main vocal, which, now that I've just listened back to this, there is this section after the second rap, which is not really the rap, even though it's on that vocal line. And that
baby.
doesn't sound right to me because of the distortion. So I'm going to move these vocals onto a different channel because I know I've got a cleaner channel here on the verse. I'm going to try this.
Baby, what do you say?
There we go.
Those awful words to me. Come on, girl. Come on, let it lie. My wounds need time to heal. But the gin, it knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's start looking at these backing vocals. So we've got two here that are called backing 1 and backing 2. Let's see what they are by just playing them. Yes, so the link to my own course, the Reaper course, does still work. However, that one is not currently on sale, as it were. So, I mean, if you really want to get really good at Reaper, by all means, use the Reaper course. Please do. But if your intention this evening is something else, the other one is currently on sale. My one may be on sale in the future again, who knows. If you're absolutely desperate to learn how to use Reaper right now, there is my ultra in-depth comprehensive Ultimate Reaper guide. But yeah, soon that will be on sale again. Okay. So, looks like these are oohs, which is great for processing in terms of mindset. I'm just going to hide everything that's in the vocal group there. That's a little button that I've added in Reaper. If I right-click on this master, there's a button there for clickable icon for folder tracks to show and hide children. And that means I can show and hide things, so I don't need like a million drums right there. So that keeps things nice and simple. Those are the tracks I have from a parent view, and then just behind where my head is there is the effects and the gang vocals, which we've not quite come to yet. So these two oohs are the same thing, so they need to be relatively hard panned. Yes, there is the Discord server indeed. So yeah, if you want to carry on the conversation, ask loads of questions, even when we're not on stream, the Discord server is the place to do it. We are slowly but surely building up a little community there, which is great. That's another aim of mine, is to really build up a little community. So that there are people, there will be people in that little community who have different specialties as well in terms of knowledge. So it's in future, the aim is to not just be me answering questions all day long, even though I really don't mind doing so. The aim is, if there are people in there who have special product knowledge, everybody can share and learn from each other. So I'm going to add these to another group called Ooh. How very technical. Probably not nearly loud enough, but I'm going to mute the other backing vocals for now and bring them in as and when. Right, so they're not nearly loud enough, but that's cool. Virtual mix rack, what have you got for me? This, as with all of the channels, I think is going to be USA, and where are you? New York, with the preamp there to give it some. They actually sit quite nicely already because they're lower than the main vocal, so their frequency range sits below. Hello, Jay. Hello, everybody. And because they're on the sides of the mix, they're not competing with the main vocal, which is the main focus of our stereo field. But there is going to be some EQ sculpting that I want. Not as corrective, because this sounds quite nice, but let's just sort things out. I'm going to take the low end out of these oohs. Just in case there is any ooh and any accidental low stuff that could muddy up the mix at that point. Problem with stuff that muddies up a mix is quite often you don't hear it, you just feel that something isn't right. So one of the good tricks of mixing is to make sure that the frequencies are clear on everything without audibly destroying the audio. Yeah.
Baby, when the dark show a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGH.
Right, so there I've dipped that 600 hertz, which in that ooh was the kind of ooh, the slightly lower stuff. I might change that to 400 hertz.
Baby, when the dark show
Yeah.
a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. Baby, when the dark show a
So I'm going to add a little top end to that ooh.
Baby, when the dark show a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin.
When I say a little, that's a lot, but I used my ears to decide what a little was. This is one of the other things about mixing a lot of the time is that if you look at the waterfall graph for this, the FFT, which I'll bring up, this is what those oohs look like before the processing. So there's a lot around here, around the and there's a bit there at the top, but not loads. If I move this EQ to after our processing and show you that, suddenly they're about the same. The lower one's a bit less, but this one up here is way more. So suddenly you can see how that high end in that ooh is suddenly a lot more. And that for me helps it sit. Because there are no sibilants in it. It's literally just oohs, so there's nothing to tame, which gives us freedom to push them. Now this ooh is very dry. Let's start with the slapback. That sounds bigger already. Lots of vocal plate. Let's see where that's got us. More high end. There it is. Just get rid of that re-EQ because we were just using it for display purposes and we don't want to be chugging our poor CPU. So now I've got 5 tracks of what looks to be the same thing. It might be harmonies. Let's find out. Right, so we've got how many lower ones? 3 lower ones, 2 higher ones. Does the voice have distortion? It does. Very much on purpose. That was our rap section, which you may have missed yesterday. I'm purposefully, for that section, exciting it with loads of saturation because that's kind of the rap section. So the saturation on the New York there on the main vocal is really pushed. So if I play you a little bit of this section before it's clean,
Put on your face, fresh clothes and underwear.
Then this section's driven.
But baby, when the dark will show a striking sight, I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin.
And then when it changes section, it's clean again, but slightly louder.
But the gym, it knows you better than I do. I love you all.
And there's loads of stuff to add on there. So that's where I made sure this was cleaner on the chorus, because there's going to be more and looking at it, lots more guitar surrounding it. So trying to find space in this mix. So let's solo all these. I don't need 5 lots of processing on here because I'm going to treat these as a folder. So I'm going to move all these into our folder called R. So we've got OO and we've got R. Now R, I'm going to pan these. So all the way left, all the way right, one in the middle. No, one slightly off to the side. I don't want it to take the exact same pan as the main vocal. And then the higher R's can go maybe 70-something% either side. Let's see what that's done. Lovely. So let's just completely steal our processing from the OO channel. Probably don't need nearly as much high end. Don't need as much low end either. Because these are going to sit as a backing vocal. So we can really... Probably going to take the 600 Hz out of these. That honky thing. Which will allow me to push them up further in the mix without them overtaking everything. Which is a very common thing. Hello to Gold Knight 187 on Mixer. So, yeah, it looks like we've got quite a few people tuned in now. Let's get the plate and everything going on here. Very vintage. Love it. Right, so the timing's a little loose on these. It comes in before the next bar, so I'm just gonna trim them all. And you don't hear because it's backing vocal and there's no pop, no start of a word. You can really soften that start off and edit it clean. There we go. So I'm going to repeat that little trick. And just clean that up there. Oh, wrong button. That was the dynamic split button, which we'll talk about another time. Awesome. And make sure they're nice and clean. Clean edits are good edits. And so what have we got here? Extra do. Everybody loves extra do. Okay, what's this one? Right, so they're not as loud as the others, so let's bring them up to match and see what happens when we play all these together. It's still in mono right now. Gin, yes. So, yeah, not a genie kind of gin, unfortunately. That would be nice. So, I'm just going to clean up this, because this only happens once in the song by the look of it. And I think I'm going to go with a slightly more old school kind of thing here. So, these are going to be a group. So, the backing is going to be oohs, ahs, and doos. Oohs, ahs, and doos. Love it. So, this is going to be the group called Do. So, I've got ooh, ah, and do. And I'm not going to pan these. Dun, dun, dun. What? What is he doing? I'm going to use that crafty little MDA pseudo stereo trick, which is going to comb filter everything, give it a 20 millisecond delay, do a bit of clever stereo-y stuff. Because this is a backing vocal, I'm not too worried about the stereo coherency on them. They are just ear candy after all, the way that this seems to be. And this will keep both together, but then both vocals doubly spread. I'm going to make sure these are less saturated and definitely not push the 4K on these. Probably back that off. There we go. So that's nice and thin sounding. So I've taken a load of low end and a load of mids out there. I specifically want these to be quite scooped in a way, because these are going to sit on the sides of the mix, not in the same EQ space as that main vocal, or in the same EQ space as these R's, which are going to play at exactly the same time. So let's see how these are going to match in volume-wise. Okay, so they're too loud. That's fine. Just bring them down. Right, so I really need to take the low end out of these, because the low end's reinforcing the low end in the main vocal, which we don't want. This main vocal in the mids is a little bit too bassy for my liking. I'm going to take some...
Knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do.
I'm going to use a bell on the bottom of this SSL and just search it out. It might be 200-ish.
Knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows...
240 is where I'm hearing that low end whoa, 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 whoa on the vocal. I just want some less of that.
Knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true.
There we go, let's try that.
Knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do.
At this point, I'm going to take that whole backing vocal group down a little, and actually take the vocal group down just a dB as well. Just what I'm going to do now is turn up my headphones a little bit. I'm going to take down probably the sax and trumpet a touch as well. Just a dB. Turn my headphones up a little to match, and suddenly the drums will pop out at me without me having to overload the master bus.
Knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do.
Really take that low end out there. Right, now to tackle Mount Gang vocal. Because look at this. This is what I've got to do now. This is going to be fun.
We love the gin. We love the gin.
Okay, that's interesting.
We love the gin. We love the. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Is that the same performance?
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's my headphone level? Probably about 4, maybe 5. I don't mix loud. I don't mix loud at all. That's one of the reasons I'm able to do these quite long streams and not go absolutely insane. And also it means I can keep a much better perspective on how everything's doing. Even if a track is like, it's supposed to be a loud, slamming, aggressive track, I don't turn the headphones up because then my perspective is lost. If I'm listening to a song and I'm not mixing it, I might just crank it for a bit just to be like, yeah! But if I'm monitoring it to make it sound as good as I can make it sound, that's counterintuitive. And I think, on a separate note, I think I've just discovered how to make this a lot easier on myself. Because there's a lot of tracks here, but
We love the gin.
that's close.
We love the gin.
They're the same vocal.
We love the gin.
So let's just close down the do's there.
We love the gin.
One's a close mic, one's a far mic.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Let's just select every other track in this lot and then select every other track and pan them left and right so these become stereo pairs. Did that go that far? I don't know if that
We love the gin.
covers all of... Oh, that's
We love the gin.
that's a proper gang. But let's just solo the rest.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Pay no mind to whether these are in pitch or not, because this is gang vocals, and gang vocals are what they are. Gang vocals, generally, you just kind of leave them.
We love the gin.
So let's get this in the mix.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Right, so now to make this sound a bit more like a rowdy rabble, let's get these in their own little folder group.
We love the gin.
And these sound a little bit too... what's the word? Gentle right now. So loads of slapback.
We love the gin.
Too much.
We love the gin.
Still too much.
We love the gin.
And that's a good start. Let's put this into the snare plate because it's just a different sound to the vocal plate.
We love the gin. We love the gin.
And into the vocal plate as well. Probably less though.
We love the gin. We love the gin.
There we go. So I've not done any kind of EQ or saturation stuff yet, and that already sounds more like a traditional kind of punk group vocal. Ah. There's children singing on the gang vocals about alcohol. Awesome. Right, okay. So let's go all 70s with this. I'm going to use the Hollywood preamp and saturate it a lot with a pushed preamp. Just going to use a Neve and probably push that as well. See what we get.
We love the gin.
Too much.
We love the gin.
And get that Neve EQ in there because that low mid is just
We love the gin.
muddy as you like. So that can all go.
We love the gin.
These headphones are not AKGs. These are Sennheiser HD 650s. If you've seen me turning this way and you've seen them look like that, that's what happens when the grill mesh falls off one side. I have that downstairs and I keep meaning to glue it back in. But it's more of an aesthetic thing. It doesn't affect the sound. It's kind of to protect the insides there, much like that side is how it's supposed to look, except it isn't because that's absolutely been battered. These headphones have been quite literally around the world with me, and it shows. Whereas that side, yeah, I need to put the cover back on there. It's just finding a little bit of time and getting out the glue. But yeah, these 650s, they're pretty battered, but I had the calibration checked and they sound fine. Hello to creative mind. Let's push a lot of this high end on the knee, shall we? A new cable, yes. These are the 3rd or 4th cable that these headphones have had. The original cable was 3 meters long, which is too long, and that rubberized texture would pull on everything. Hi Sam in chat. And so I tend to go for these braided cables, not because I think they sound better, but because firstly they're not broke like the original cable, but secondly they're quite smooth and kind of can just move freely across clothing and hands and things and not suddenly get pulled and end up ripping the headphones off my head, which is quite important to me. And these are around 1.5 meters long, including a very long split here, which I specifically requested so that it wasn't kind of riding up there, and that means I can wear these behind my head without it catching if I'm recording something, or if I'm playing guitar, then it doesn't kind of catch this little kind of join here on the guitar. Just because you can do it custom, you know, why not? I think it cost me about 40 quid for this cable, and it's been worth its weight in gold. I had a couple made before that kind of fell apart quickly, but yeah. The whole audiophile thing, I don't really get it. It either works or it doesn't. Copper is conductive or it's not. But the fact that this, you know, all the other reasons that I just said, that's why I've got custom cable. Okay, moving on. Still be okay to come down for the lockdown situations, have a look around. As I've always said, if I've got time, which is difficult, but maybe. And yeah, send me an email after the lockdown is finished, because right now it's just asking me a question I can't have an answer to by law. So let's move on. So I've just taken a load of this stuffy 500-600 hertz stuff out and just pushed the high end. So this was before on the vocal, and this is now. Suddenly just takes all that stuffiness out. Let's see if this fits in the mix. It might need a volume push, it might not.
We love the gin.
It doesn't.
We love the gin. We love the gin.
There's one on the right somewhere that's really sticking out.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Where is it?
We love the gin. We love the gin.
That's the one that's stuck out by a mile, so that can come down volume wise.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
And let's push up these 3, which seem to be the more gangy ones.
We love the gin. 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 We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love.
Right, so this is where it gets fun.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Right, these two
We love the gin. We love.
can go in the same folder as this other lot and probably just need their volume bumping. There we go.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
Right, there we go. So that's a group getting there. I'm going to rearrange these a little. I'm going to bump that gang up to the top because they start singing first. Then we've got a call and response thing going. So that's definitely going to need its own channel.
We all love the gin.
So that's Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
We all love the gin. We all love the gin. We all.
So that is probably going to need... Let's just call this one the gin. No, let's call it response. Because it's call and response. So I'm going to put those in a group and I'm just going to wholesale copy the settings from the other channel but then that gives me the freedom to change it.
We all love the gin. We all love the gin.
But these don't need all that high-end boost because it sounds like he's much closer to the mic, much more present, doesn't need that high frequency push.
We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin.
Right, so this one needs a bit less low end.
We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin.
And I've just decided to push somewhere around 2K on this, just to make it poke out on the sides of the mix a bit. Because this has got some important diction that the others don't need.
We all love the gin. We love the gin. We all love the gin.
So in context, it might be a little mid-heavy, but we'll soon see. Yeah, let's mute the rest just to check that.
We all love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We all love
Hello to the Bommel in chat.
We love the gin.
Your ears start to hurt with glasses and headphones. Well, you'll be pleased to know that one of the specific reasons I went for these type of frames is they sit above the headphone line. And HD 650s, with their nice velour earpads, don't put a lot of pressure on the head. Believe me, I've been through what you've been through a lot, because I've been wearing specs now for about the past 15 years. I wasn't a child or even a teenager that wore glasses, so I got kind of a system shock after I graduated from university and suddenly needed glasses and was working with headphones on and getting those pressure headaches. So it just turned out that I needed the right shape frames with the right shaped headphones that didn't clash. A lot of cheap cans or with smaller earpads press directly on the head to stay on. And that doesn't work with glasses. I find that can cause those horrible headaches. So let's see what else we've got going on here, because this is where this suddenly gets very dense. Dense from a compositional standpoint. Dense not as in duh. Open ear helps a bit. No, that's not it in my experience. Because I've used things like Bayer 770s and not had much of an issue. The open back won't avoid headaches because of the glasses. It will avoid headaches because of kind of ear pressure, but that's literally just because closed backs, if there's a perfect seal, will start to press air into your sinuses. Because as you get warm, air expands, there's nowhere for the air to go, it will push straight back in, which is why you end up with a pressure headache. With open back headphones, there's somewhere for it to go. I mean, with loose fitting closed backs, there's somewhere for it to go, but when you're mixing, you want the seal to be, optimal. And with some big, heavy headphones, it usually is quite optimal, and that kind of thing starts to happen. I mean, it's not like an airlock or anything, it's subtle, but it's there.
We love the gin. 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 We love the gin.
Right, so I've got
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
So I've got 3 here that are quite gentle. So I'm going to put them in a group of their own. Try and push them out in the mix a little bit so they blend. I'm going to call that gentle. Why not? And then move that. Oh no, that's in the right place.
We love the gin.
And this might need a compressor on this group.
We love the gin.
So this doesn't need that whole mid-range sucking away. It does need some mid taken away, but higher up. I think what I'll do here is just stick trimmer before Hollywood and just push the volume. That'll do it. You might notice I'm not using compressors here as well, because on a gang vocal, I might use a gentle compressor once everything's in on the whole group. But I found if I start really heavily compressing each separate source with this many of them, even though I could, I mean, my processor would cope, but yeah. Open back for recordings, cut down on track bleed, and open back for mixing. Generally, yeah. Although, having said that, unless you're recording drums, my general findings have been that I can track perfectly well with these. Even with like heavily compressed vocals, if my levels are not ridiculous. But that's personal preference. I do find that most people in the studio work better with closed backs. But yeah, I tend to track most of my instruments now with open back headphones on. But that's because I've become so used to these, I don't want to start switching around. And the compromise for me is that I just can't blast the headphones, but I don't anyway. I've got so used now to working at talking volumes. In my headphones, just for reference, my own voice is coming back at roughly talking volume, and the backing vocals are coming through less loud than that. So for me, they're coming back as "We love the jam," that kind of volume level, and so I have ultimate clarity. The only downside is I can hear the laptop fans, but the music is just about louder than that it drowns them out. Anyway, let's blend these three in with what we already have. I've just taken the high end down on that original group, this lot, just because as we start to build more tracks in, there's a build-ups there of some frequencies that if we didn't need to add about 1 million vocal tracks would have been perfect. But now, is problem. So it looks, and I'm going to take a guess, that these 6 are all related. Right, so no solos. I'm just having these. Right, this is going to be messy. Right, I'm going to call this lot the pub. And I'm going to do something a little different with this lot, just because I'm going to move these into a folder of their own. And it's just kind of creatively come to me that hopefully I can make this work. I'm going to put this pub group here. I'm going to copy all the settings from the last group. Hopefully that'll work. And it will need some fine tuning because this lot sounds like a right rabble. I'm going to pan these. So that one's all the way left. That one's all the way right. That one's 70-ish percent, 70-ish percent, 40%, 40%. So it's going to sound a little weird at first because that first group is going to be off to the left. Ooh. There's a lot of low end build up somewhere. So that's gotta go. Ah, the trimmer. We don't need the trimmer. Right, so let's move it on. What are you two? Right, so they're that, but they're not a gang. Ah, you were saying the Beatles used coals, right? Well, I mean, I wasn't gonna kind of correct somebody because my detailed knowledge of the Beatles recording isn't that deep. I like the Beatles. I like a lot of the recordings. I could do with reading up more. There are certain things that I know as kind of factors to when certain stuff was made. Beyond that, I don't really know Beatles recording tech as well as some people do the ins and outs of a cat's backside. Ah, that's good beer. And it's not gin. I've got a bottle of gin downstairs, Easter egg flavoured gin. It's disgusting. Yeah, that's right, you heard me. Easter egg flavour. How does it taste? Like crap. It's supposed to taste like Easter egg chocolate. Cool, so what's left? We've got these four. Starting to sound radio ready. I've not even added in the other guitars yet. There's about 9 other guitars to add in. So I'm going to add these in. I'm going to call these Drunk Man because it sounds like a drunk man. Drunk Man. And I am just consistently copying all these settings, but you'll notice each time I'm playing it back then once I've got my channel strip set up and listening for offending frequencies. So let's try that with the others. Okay, so what's this little lonely thing over here? Right, so that's going to go on top as like an a cappella part. That's it. Yeah, try copy and pasting like that in Pro Tools. You kind of can, but it's not nearly this quick. So this is ending kind of like coda. So yeah, I'm going to copy that and all my sends. A lot less reverb on this one. Make sure that really pokes out at 3K, because that's going to need a little bit of space to get heard. I have to create a new send return insert. Well, I don't have to. I could have just done that on the folder, but the reason I've done this, if you look very closely, is I've been tailoring these. Some have got a bit more plate send, some have got a bit less for the vocals and snare plates. Some of them have quite different tonal things. So I've done it this way, even though it looks like a lot of messing around, because it gives me more control. So I can unmute them now, and I've just got this last one to do. And this last one, I'm going to put off to one side, but I'm really going to hit this home. And this one I'm probably not going to add any reverb to, because this one I need to poke right out. So I'm going to use Distressor. Suddenly that's really kind of like, whoa! I'm going to pan it off to the side. Give it some low end back. Because suddenly that's really in your face compared to the rest of it. Because the rest of it I've been trying quite closely with the mids to tame it so it doesn't build up, because it's going to build up anyway. Listen to this. This is going to be a mess. Even after the work that I've done, this is going to be a lot. Let's just listen to this soloed. Here we go, it's going to get messy. I think that came together all right. Oh, the same person's hit the dislike button that always hits the dislike button every day. Yeah, there's always one, isn't there? So, I wish whoever that was they'd at least say why they were disliking the video, so at least I could go, well, at least I know you're an idiot. Or a nasty person. Or, you know, whatever. I don't really care. So, this whole group is at -10 and was registering at -10. So, in hindsight, let's take all these down a little and put a copy of, you guessed it, ladies and gentlemen, Virtual Mix Rack on the group. But this one is a little different. So the first thing I'm going to do is trimmer just to bring the vocals down here. And then I'm trying to think. Don't need any more saturation, that's for sure. FG401. So I'm going to use an optical compressor here, just at 2.5 to 1, nothing crazy, and hopefully not compressing pretty much at all apart from this mental section where it's just going to shave the tops off. it's somewhere in between Grandad, we love you, and all in all, you're just another brick in the wall.
We love the gin.
There we go. So that
We love the gin.
that compressor
We love the gin.
isn't doing anything until we need it.
We love the gin.
And we don't need any makeup gain
Love the gin.
because the aim is literally to bring it down, nothing else.
We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin. We love the gin.
They sound like they're in the wrong place. I'm going to move them.
We love the gin. Love the gin. Love the gin. We love the gin.
Oh, if it wasn't for a couple of reverbs, you really can mix an entire thing with Virtual Mix Rack. I mean, look at that. That's Virtual Mix Rack wall to wall to wall. There are some digital EQs that I've used for more specific things, but I could use the SSL EQ in Virtual Mix Rack for that. I just prefer when I have to do quite specific surgical cuts to use a graphical, more digital EQ, because then I can really hone in on those frequencies rather than it being a sweetness thing. It's very specifically then you are a problem, out you go. It's just a mentality thing. Between that and micro shift, yeah, VMR is great. All right, it does kind of make it sound like a console, yeah. It just has some of that quality to it, I guess. So these are all the guitars that I've not added in yet. This is where the whole mix is going to start to panic. And that's fine. Guitar verse 1 low in mix.
But baby, when the dog
Okay, so let's start. That sounds like it could do with an amp on it. That's a good start. I'm just going to close down the gang group and the Bvox group and the vocal group as well, and move back to the opening up the guitar group folder. Bam, ba-dum, bam, bam, ba-da-bam, ba-dum, bam. I'm going to start using crunchy-ish amps. So, Thermionic. I'm going to use some of the Kazrog stuff. It's a bit weird, but I like to use amps you wouldn't think of. And I'm going to use a couple of impulse responses that are not available to the rest of the world yet. I've got these which I'm making for Lancaster Audio. And so that's my traditional 412 Zilla cabinet with an SM57 on it. Nice. And I like to use, and it's a little bit weird, I like to use... Why are you not changing? As a Mesa Dual rectifier, far more often than you would think. There we go, comparing that to that. I can move that off to one side.
insights, I see a different side to you than in that light. You origin and where we're going to get you.
And then, what have we got on here for Virtual Mix Rack? Nothing but a compressor. And then we've got a re-EQ on the... Oh, that's on the main guitars. Oh, so Reaper does have vocal tuning stuff inbuilt which I don't tend to use. There's retune, which is either a guitar tuner or auto tune, where you pick the key and the attack time, or it's got a manual correction thing, which is kind of like Melodyne. I'm not a big fan of doing that. I don't like the sound of it, but I've got an older copy of auto tune, which I can use if I need it to be auto and I need to save time. Sometimes I'll use auto tune and make sure it's in the right key for something like a bass, believe it or not. If someone's played a bass and sent it to me out of key, I can generally tune it. It's a bit weird, but it works. But my thing is Melodyne. Huge Melodyne fan. Because it's completely manual and I have a lot of scope with it to change anything I want. And I've been told that Melodyne 5 came out today. Now only 49 euros. I am going to do that for the next stream. I'm not doing it right now because we're a little busy and I'm not using Melodyne on this mix anyway, so that would be annoying. But looks like there's a lot of cool new features that we've been waiting on forever. So yeah, Melodyne's my go-to because it's so powerful. Or it was so powerful. At this point, it's just crazy. Yeah, so I've just looked at the Twitch. So anybody who's watching, I know I shouldn't say this, but if you're watching on YouTube, if you would be so kind as to switch over to Twitch, twitch.tv/Hoppole Studios. There is better sound quality there, so apparently you can hear the mix detail a little better. But also we're trying to push towards being a Twitch affiliate because we're going to do streams like this a lot more often, and that would make logical sense to build up the whole Twitch thing because that's what Twitch is really for. But yeah, doing it manually in retune. Yeah, but the other thing is if I really, 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 really need to tune something, I can split an audio file with S for split, and I can just hit F2 for properties, and I can change the pitch in exact semitones. I can do it manually, and I do that quite a lot if I have to. Yeah, don't worry about number watching for affiliates, because there's more to it than that. That's not the only metric. The $99 Melodyne get the job done? No, it will not. Unfortunately, the basics one, the essential Melodyne, doesn't have some of the key features like changing the modulation and drift separately on melodies. What do you use as a time-based setting? Not sure I understand the question. Time-based is minutes and seconds. But do you mean in terms of like BPM? Because you can add BPMs at separate parts, you know. So like I can add, with Shift and C, I can add a marker that's a different thing. Yeah, that pin that's stuck on the screen, I don't know what plugin that's from. That's weird. That's definitely a visual bug, and I'm not sure what plugin that's from. That's weird. Huh. That's going to annoy me now. I could have... Oh, let's try Control Alt and F. No. Because Control Alt and F closes all floating windows. Whatever that floating window is, that's really annoying. So what I'm going to have to do is close this project. 104 tracks in this project. Gee whiz. It's like someone sent me a hip-hop track. And closing that down's not got rid of that, so I'm going to have to close the whole of Reaper. There we go. Weird visual bug. Open it up, and that's gone. Cool. Time and beats work different for using different time signatures and envelopes? Not really, it doesn't. I've never found an issue with one or the other. The only time I change project settings between time and beats is if I need to change the BPM on a track and I don't want all the audio items to magically pitch, time stretch with that, because that's something you can do that's very powerful in Reaper. This song's at 92 BPM. If I suddenly decided I wanted this to play back at 120, it will. In key. It's really quite powerful. But it will only do that in beats mode. In time mode, the grid moves independently of all the items, which can be quite useful if you're kind of feeling out a track's... What's the word? So like, here's a really fun thing. So let's just get this guitar tone halfway decent. And then we'll do this cool thing. So all I need here... Let's get New York on the case. But just... There we go. Take all that low end out. That'll do. So this is at 92 BPM. If I suddenly want this song to play at 120, I put that in, which is actually just behind where you guys are. You can't quite see that. So I'm just going to move the chat for a second. You see where it says BPM? It was 92. I've changed that to 120. Listen to this. This is going to be weird. Ah. No, it's not, because this one I set to be in time. Let's change it to beats. And now change it to 120. And this happens. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Reaper can, in real time stretch everything aligned to the grid, which is bonkers. You can do it two ways as well. I usually have this thing hidden. Where is it? There's kind of a play rate slider, which I generally have. Yeah, oh, it's been moved right to the edge, which is you can. So you can do that with it, or you can have preserve pitch in audio items, and this will happen. Which that's, yeah, if that's preserve pitch, now when I hit play, or I can slow that to below one time. Which is very clever, but also I can right click it, I can increase it. If I don't preserve the pitch, I can like increase this whole song by a semitone. Or down by a semitone. Do I ever use tape pitch effects? Rarely, very rarely, and when I do, I don't tend to do it this way, which is why I kind of ignore that slider over there. When I do tape effects, I tend to find something like a tape effect plugin and do it that way. It's such an overdone thing. I have done things a couple of times where like I'll have that play rate going too fast and have a drummer play to that, and then have the pitch back to normal, which then lowers the pitch of all the drums as well as playing it back at the right speed. So suddenly you get that kind of big kind of effect. So yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. So you can use that and suddenly become like you can pretend you're in Rings of Saturn or something like that. How to become a maniac metal shredder. Learn to play at 60 BPM and then turn up the speed with that dial. Done. Yeah. So, anywho, let's listen to these next guitars. Right, so these are going under the wrap. So these probably need to be very similar to the others. So I'm going to group these to save on processing. And I'm going to make sure this is in stereo. Yeah, so it's not in forced mono mode. And make sure that right hand side's louder to match volume. That sounds nice. It's really kind of fuzzy. I tend to like Mesa amp sounds. I mean, would you believe it? I've literally just bought this. This is my new toy, which I'm going to be playing with when I get my reamp setup all set up again. This is a Mesa V-Twin preamp. It's basically a dual rectifier without the power stage. So I can run that into the power stage of something like a 5150, which I happen to have down there. Hey, what do you have down there? Hey, it's a 5150. Yeah, I've always liked the sound of a Mesa dual rectifier. I find it's buzzy, fuzzy, has no definition, and is just thick sounding, and is very, very difficult to get right with an amp sim, especially when you start cranking the gain up. There we go. So that definitely needs an EQ on there, probably of the Neve variety, to firstly remove a lot of that low-end stuffiness. That, and push a bit of that buzzy fuzziness, because what I don't want in this mix is for these guitars here to be going taka 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 taka. I like having no definition on some sources, because I just kind of want them to be a wall of sound that sits in a little place lower down in the mix and just supports. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if we're getting into Beatles facts, talking about Rain, they recorded that higher and played it faster, then lowered it. Did you know that Strawberry Fields Forever is actually two versions of that song mashed together? One version was played and the tape was sped up, and the other song was played faster and the tape was slowed down so that they pitch matched. Which is why the whole song sounds really weird.
But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in their light. You origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. But the gym knows you better than I do. I love you.
How's my processor doing at this point? Not too bad, actually. So a lot of processing goes into these guitar amps because they are far more harmonically complex than something like just a basic EQ. If you think of how you have to emulate several valve gain stages and have it not sound awful. Yeah. So let's have a look at these next guitars, because we've got Fuzz Na 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 Na, as I have named it. What else have we got? So we've got Sparkle. Is that the same part? No, it's not. They are two takes with differing volumes. Let's match the volumes better. That's better. Okay, so these, I'm going to use a completely different thermionic amp. Going to go with the Black Verb, which is a Fender Blackface Twin Reverb. Is somebody doing a swear? We try and keep it family friendly, just because we want to keep accessibility to this as wide as possible. I do rant sometimes, and if you look really carefully at the last 500 videos that I've done, you'll find an occasional swear, but you have to go looking. It's very rare. There we go. Bright? Yeah. So there we go. I've not even put the amp on yet, so I'm going to change this cab to a 1x12 because it's very much a kind of fendery thing. But I'm using the new copper back. And what mic am I going to use? 421 right in the middle. Bright. Ooh. Super bright. Yes. I've not even started... there we go. I've not even started EQing this yet, and it already fits better because it's so bright. I'm going to put a snare plate on there, even though this isn't a snare, I know. There we go. Because it's not particularly percussive, it kind of sits in that snare reverb, and then... more high end, less low end. And by absolutely killing that low end there and pushing a bit more high end, that should sit in a place in a mix, even though usually I, wouldn't do that. Oh, hang on. I am a bit of an idiot. I forgot to make a group. I've been doing all this on just one of those guitars. So what I'm going to do is just move all this across. Move my sends across. Then put both of these in that as a little group called Sparkly. Sparkly! So if you're wondering, in the chat specifically, we've just got an auto moderation system that just keeps the chat family friendly, and it's just yeah, it just means it's more accessible. So if if someone wants to show their young teenage son or whatever, this is someone who does mixing for a living, and they can both sit and watch it. And someone who's of more of a polite persuasion doesn't get easily offended. That can only be a good thing in terms of reaching a wider audience, especially with this being a long-term goal for me. I'm not trying to just get attention like now. I'm trying to make things that last, and if you come back to this a year from now, 2 years from now, still relevant and still accessible. That's the idea. He says drinking a beer on stream, but then I am an adult. I am, being responsible. So, yeah. Would each of these sound good if it pitch dived during the ringing phase? I'm not even sure how I'd do that without some real messing around. Yes, and as Mazzy quite rightly says in chat, there may be an upcoming rating system imposed on YouTube in the US, which is where most of my viewers are, and in the EU, which technically, unless you count Brexit, is where I am. So, yeah, I'm trying to be relatively careful to still be accessible to the largest possible audience going forward. I'm very much hoping at some point in future. I've just noticed that Ivy's got ice cream all over me. Apologies for my scruffy appearance. Long term, I'm hoping to make the YouTube thing pretty much a full-time occupation, because right now I do still do a lot of work in media in general, which is cool. Yeah. Yeah, and the whole thing with freedom of speech is, I mean, a lot of people misunderstand freedom of speech. You are free to say what you like. Just be aware that you are also free to deal with the consequences of that. That's kind of how that works. I could go out in the street right now and scream that I really don't like somebody, and I'm allowed to say that. Whether that person's fans then shun me from society or not is the consequence of my actions. And I am not legally protected in any country from that consequence. That's something a lot of people do tend to miss. Yeah, I can say what I like, but the consequences of that may come back to bite me in a more civil context. The government robs you blind, but you're worried whether you say, well, yeah, but it's not worried. Like, in person or in the right context, I will swear like a trooper. I am not afraid of swearing, but context is important. Generally speaking, a lot of the world is still under the impression that swearing, especially in front of children and younger audiences, is a bad thing. And whether I agree with that or not, I kind of have to go with it if I want to be accessible to said younger audience as well as everybody else. I'm certainly not aiming any of this content at minors, but I certainly want this to be accessible to them. I try and take a more academic approach. I mean, if I was teaching this in a school, say a high school, I mean, some of this is fairly advanced for a high school, but let's say that's what I was doing. If I start swearing in front of the kids, I'm not going to keep that job for very long. So that's my incentive. And generally speaking, I do kind of ask that people in the chat kind of play along. I appreciate it. I mean, like, if the odd swear word pops into chat and slips through, I'm not reading them all out, but like, it's a good conversation to have. Like, recently, I've become quite good friends with a certain very sweary YouTuber, Mr. Glenn Fricker. He's a really, really nice man, actually. He swears a lot on camera. That's become his persona. And in some ways, that must be limiting his access to some of his audience. But he's decided to go down that path. Hello to Marcel. Yeah, let's not get all existential with this, because this is just me being quite clear on my motivations for being kind of squeaky clean on camera. It's that quite honestly, years from now. Ooh. Yes, you are welcome. That is one heck of a name. Selector PW4 Real Enter. Yeah, that's a lot of name right there. Cool. Right. So over the top of this. Right, this is going to need some work. Let's start off with another thermionic amp. You're an active participant or a passive observer. That depends on whether you ask the question. As soon as you ask the question, you are an active observer. Schrodinger's experiments tell us this. This is where the idea of Schrodinger's cat comes from. I'm going to try a Marshall JMP45 here. It's going to be a little crunchy. Christ. There we go. So this sounds weird because there's no amp on there, no cabinet on there. So let's put a cab on there. And that sounds really fuzzy and buzzy. And the reason for that is that these guitars, the clean DIs, have a lot of low end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mold this tone before the amp. You see all that low end? That's on the EQ. So I'm going to really shelf that out. And suddenly that sounds like a guitar again. If I let all that bass back in, listen how there's no low end definition, so the amp doesn't know what to do. Whereas if I take all that super low end out, that sounds much more like what I think we would have intended to hear. So keep hitting save and little bits of reverb on this. That sounds pretty much there. I'll take. So that sits in a very different EQ place to that super sparkly guitar, where the super sparkly guitar probably fills kind of a 3 to 4K range. This is much more 1 to 2K range. Ah, now the thing that you don't need the bass on a guitar, that is yeah, only a Sith deals in absolutes is the old joke. So the effect that Ricky was asking for, I think, was on these sparkly guitars to go or something like that. And I might come back to that later. But for now, I'll come back to that later if I can, because doing real-time pitch bending and that kind of thing, tricky. I think I have a plugin for that in the Kilohertz bundle. So yeah, I'll come back to that. It's not a no. It's we'll see. So let's go. Call this chorus ditty. Unmute that.
I love you, oh, I swear it's true. Virgin and knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. Oh, I swear it's true. Virgin and knows you better than I could do. The glass tinkles, there's a sparkle in your eye.
Right. Cool. Reaper works on everything. Works in Linux, works on Raspberry Pis. It's very cool. Right, and here's another one where I've got two takes. One's significantly louder than the other for some reason. So I'm going to bring its volume down so they kind of roughly match. Pan these all the way out. And this is very... This feels like it should be very Fendery and clean. Yes. Hi Liam, good to see you in chat. Hope you've been doing all right. Let's get another one of these Fender black faces in. Oh, yeah. And just by adding a little bit of low end back in there, that suddenly you've got a real kind of upper mid punch that should just fit this in the mix. I'm going to call this Chaka. So we've got Sparkly, the chorus ditty, and Chaka.
But the gin, it knows you better than I. Oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could.
Just out of curiosity, I'm going to mute the main vocal for a minute. Need a little more volume on that other side of that Chaka now. Right, so if I turn all three of those off, a large part of the mix drops out, which tells me they're a little too loud combined. So I'm going to bring them all down, because now there's three of them. Oops. Do 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 do. There we go. Yeah, so I turned the main vocal off just for a minute here, because that was the thing that was taking up a lot of the mid space, and I can always kind of gel the vocal EQ around a little, because we did some very gentle processing with that vocal, which was a little unusual from what I usually do, so I can probably do a little more to gel it in everywhere. So let's have a listen to this outro reggae guitar. Is that... Yeah, so that is tonally, in my mind, the same as Chaka. So on the outro, those two tracks can be deleted because that tone lives on. So these tonally are probably going to fit on the chorus ditty channel. Oh no, fuzz na 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 na. Fuzz na 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 na, because I can always automate the volumes of these. If I... Yeah. There we go. Oh, that was supposed to select two of you, you demons! Go up there. There we go. So, one more. Fuzz na 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 na, hey na 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 na. Yeah! There we go. How many more guitars do I have to fit in here? So I've now got octave. And then something else. Those are a perfect candidate to go on that sparkly channel that we made. This might just fit nicely. Because then we're keeping common themes throughout the mix as well. It's not just laziness. If I need an extra amp, I can just make another amp. It is easy enough to do, as you've seen. There we go. There we go. There we go. That sounds really nice. It's too loud. Because I think that picking is picked a lot louder, but then I can just use V for volume and turn that down. Might do a bit more work to fit that in. Oh, that's a lot of vocals. Just suddenly got a little bit of vertigo looking at all those vocal channels. That's how many vocal channels we've got in this mix. Blah. And so those two channels can go. I'm starting to get a bit more into mix efficiency recently. They can probably... Let's try the chorus ditty channel and see how that sounds. I think that works quite well. We'll take this one down in volume. And delete those two channels. And let's see how these 4 guitars now work in concert. 5 guitars even, because the other one is relatively low down. That was very much a decision. There we go. That sparkly guitar feels out of time, out of context, I think, because it's mostly accented in the ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-ba, so it's accenting the up. Out of context, it probably sounds horrible, but context is important for different parts. Now let's bring the main vocal back, because the main vocal is the thing that's missing now out of these elements.
My wounds need time to heal, but the gin knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better than I could do. Do 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 do
Quick thing is I'm going to bring down all these groups by a dB or 2 so the drums pop again, because we're kind of swamping the drums.
My wounds need time to heal, but the gin knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gin, it knows you better.
Right, at this point, I think we've pulled in every element of this mix, so now we just need to go back to the start again, and just listen through, and if anything comes up that's not fitting right, anything that isn't audible, properly audible, not just volume wise, but isn't poking out the way it should do, anything, because now, I mean, I've not heard this song in full arrangement yet, and now that every element's in there, I'll have a much more critical ear, because I'm not focusing on making sure every element works, because I mean, after deleting a load of tracks now, I've still got 103 tracks in this song. Now I need to zoom out a little bit brain wise and just listen through. So everybody listen along with me. This is what I would call the rough mix. It might be done. It might need a little work. But at this point, we're doing a whole album. For for Banana Ranch. That's the plan. So, if everything sounds good as a mix, but overall could do the little gentle EQ work on the master bus or something like that, that might be left till later, and then we'll do an entire mastering session when we've got, I think it's 12 songs. So this is song number 1. So there's lots more to come, ladies and gentlemen. There's lots of work going to go into this album. Yeah, let's have a listen.
I love it in the morning when I wake to find you there. There's a pillow mark in your face and tangled hair. There's a scar upon your neck, but you don't care. You put on your face, fresh clothes and underwear. But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in daylight. You're origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in daylight. You're origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. But the gym knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gym, it knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gym, it knows you better than I could do. The glass tinkles, there's a sparkle in your eye. When you add the ice and lime, you start to cry. If I loved you anymore, I swear I'd die. But you need a stronger man, not some wimpy guy. But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in daylight. You origin and where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. But baby, when the dark goes, you're a striking sight. I see a different side to you than in daylight. You origin is where we're going to get you through the NIGHT. Baby, what do you say? Those awful words that made. Come on, girl, come on, let it lie. My wounds need time to heal. But the gym knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gym, it knows you better than I could do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gym, it knows you better than I could do. Do 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 do. It knows you better than I do. I love you, oh, I swear it's true. The gym, it knows you better than I could do. We love the gin. 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 We love the gin.
Cool. That we love the gin is a little late sounding, so I'm just going to push that. There we go. We love the. I do a mixed gospel music. Not usually, but it's not unheard of. I have had gospel bands in the studio before. I mix whatever, generally speaking, I'm sent. I've spent the last 10 years spending a lot of my time running a recording studio where, generally speaking, if somebody phoned up and said, I've got an idea, I want to use your studio, the answer was, when do you want to book in? So I've had everything from your standard fare of indie bands, rock bands, pop groups, singers, like everything from solo singers, acoustic singers to proper like girl bands. I've had gospel, entire like 8-part choir plus full band in my live room all at once, which is a little bit of a tight fit. I had all sorts of stuff. Fun studio stories. I mean, I've recorded a singer who has a Vulcan harp before. He's in like, yes, Star Trek Vulcan harp. Lovely woman. I don't have that many funny stories from the studio, really, because especially from when we moved into the hop pole, we were really quite down the line about, like, we babysit bands, we make sure they don't do anything particularly stupid. We don't even let them have drinks in the live room apart from water, because we've had things. Oh, there's a funny story. I was recording a singer once, lovely girl called Shay, and I had to go from the studio into the office, and I accidentally knocked an entire cup of coffee over onto the desk, which then went down the desk into a computer, where I learnt the reason why you shouldn't have power supplies at the top with the fan pointing up, because all the coffee went straight in there, and not only did the computer go bang, the power went off in the entire building. Like, bang. What did you do? A proper like, eesh. And yeah, poor girl was freaked out. But we when we got everything back on, we finished the session, no problems. I mean, I've got quite a few little funny studio stories thinking about it. Some of them I might not be able to say on stream, but I mean, what I might do at this point with this mix, actually, my approach to the gospel music wouldn't be any different from my approach to any other music, to be completely honest with you. My approach is start with your rhythm section, fit your main vocal in, make sure it's nice and up front, start to add extra instruments around that. Then, when you've then got that, start to add things like choirs and groups which surround a main feature. Then when you've got everything in, like we're at this point here, then you can start looking at balance. And that pretty much covers almost every genre. I mean, it's a broad explanation because the methods involved are different every time, even between two bands that sound similar. Especially when you get sent tracks to mix, that's the killer. That's when you really learn your chops, is when bands send you material from somewhere else around the world, because you don't know what you're going to be sent, not just in terms of quality, but in terms of the engineer's preferences, choices of microphones, choices of tunings, placement of microphones, whether they've decided to be absolutely particular about tuning and timing, or whether they haven't, all that kind of stuff. When I'm tracking in the studio, I'm quite particular now about the way that I like to do things, which means that when it comes to mixing, it's relatively easy because it's all been tracked the way I would want it. So mixing is not that big a step from there. But I kind of track the way that I mix a lot of the time. That I'm searching for the same kind of sounds. I'm searching to fit the same kinds of things together. So quite often I have a philosophy where I kind of mix as I go. So do I pre-mix on tracking? I mean, yes, but not with the intention of not mixing. I make sure that everything sounds the way it should, because the ideal mix, you pull up your faders and you're done. That never happens. that is never quite the way that things pan out. But that's okay. If you can try and set your tracking session up in such a way that you're so close that mixing is very easy, that's when you end up with the most amazing results. So, yeah. The old maxims of like track as if there's no mixing, mix as if there's no mastering, they really do hold true. They don't mean don't bother. They mean get things to be as good as you can so there are no problems to fix. And so that your vision as well gets translated well. Because if I can give a mix, and if I was to track and send to a mix engineer, which I've done a couple of times, it's quite rare these days, but I have done a couple of times, I try and make sure that like all the guitars that are like reamped or tracked with real amps have the kind of sound I would want them to have. I make sure the drums, so that there's very little bleed on microphones. And you know, that's kind of how I want to do it. You know, DI tracks with no background noise and a bit of headroom. Vocal tracks that are very clear, very dry, very crisp. So that when a mixing engineer comes to it, they can do whatever they want with it and they're not fighting it. And it generally is 90% of the way there anyway. Do I produce tracks or only record? Generally in the studio, I do full production. But that depends on the band, that depends on the context, that depends on what people want. If I get someone comes in the studio who's, say, a singer-songwriter, they play one instrument, they sing, they might have a nice singing voice, but they're not well-versed in things like arrangement and vocal harmonies and doubles and all that kind of stuff. I talk to them, make sure that they understand, is this where you want to go with this song? I make sure that I'm pushing them in the direction they actually want to go. And then I get technical from there. And then I say, right, what I need from you is this. What I need from you is that. Can you hear in your head a higher harmony on that? Right, well, if you're thinking of a third up, these are the notes that you would probably want in this chord sequence. And so on and so on and so on. So I start to get technical, but I check at every point with said artist that that's what's in their mind, even though they don't have the skills to accomplish that. It's a bit of an odd skill set, full production, because it's like, if I talk to a man on the street and said, picture me a beautiful beach, now describe to me that beach. If I was an artist, I could draw down all these details and I could try and render my rendition of their idea of a beautiful beach, but I'd probably have to talk them through, well, what's over here, what's over there, what's the colour of the sky, yada, 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 and so on and so on and so on, and then use the skills to translate that. It's exactly the same thing. Sometimes you get artists who come in who know exactly what they want, and that's fine, that's great. I'm not there to fight those people. I'm there to facilitate that getting down on record. And that's my philosophy. I completely try my best to take ego out of the situation. Quite often, I've come to realise that my mixes and my tracking and my style do kind of have a sound. I quite like things to be quite punchy, quite kind of mid-rich, quite forward. That's my style, broadly speaking. But within that, that's how tracks that I produce kind of end up, which is why I've just come to acknowledge that that's my style. I never sat down and said, this is how I'm going to be, but sounds that I like in my head have led me that way. But my job really in the studio, if I'm not recording myself, is to talk to an artist and go, what do you see in your mind? Let's get there. And then you ask a million questions to get there. And that's the best fun of production. And that's what I really like doing. I mean, I love doing stuff like mixing, but I'm quite lucky in this circumstance that I have gotten to know Ricky and Paul from Banana Ranch fairly well on a musical level, and quite often I can kind of guess where they're going. So also they're really, really nice guys. I'm just going to render this while we talk as mix 1 to send over, because with this being a remote mixing session as well, there we go, render 1 file. I can send this to them, and because they're really, really nice guys, again, we can all put ego aside, which is the best people to work with, because I can say to them, have a listen, see what you think. It's absolutely killing the computer. So yeah, audio's getting glitchy because I'm trying to render, so I'm going to put this to 1 speed offline render. That might just take a lot of the processing power that we need away. Let's try that. There we go. Yeah, so that's not absolutely killing the processor. So yeah, then I'll get things like this guitar is louder than I would like it to be. Can I hear more of this at this chorus? And at that point, I can just go, okay, those are things that you want to hear. Cool. And then I'll find a way to do those things, not always necessarily with the exact instruction given, but I will try and facilitate those requests. Sometimes it'll be things like on the track that we did with the mandolin last week for Aurora Project, one of the requests was there was some guitar squeals on the bridge, and the original request was, can we have some reverb and delay on that? And I listened to it and kind of came to realize that I think what they wanted was for it to stand out as a cool little moment. I tried adding some reverb and delay just off stream, and it didn't make it stand out. It just made it sound mushy in the next few seconds. So what I tried instead was just got that section with automation of the volume and just pushed it so that the guitar just for that little bit went go and really stood out. And Paul listened to it and said, yeah, that's great. Because I think I understood what they wanted there was to make that a feature. Even though they'd used different language, and I did try the request, I found that I kind of was like, well, why did they ask things like that? That's a real tool of production. So yes, this is now exporting at 1 times real time, just so that the computer doesn't have a fit like we just saw. What headphone amp do I use for my headphones? Right now I'm using the inbuilt headphone out on an Arturia Audio Fuse 8 Pre. The Arturia stuff is really good. When I'm not using that, I've got a portable 18-volt headphone amp from a little boutique company called Nico Sound Lab. Unfortunately, he's not making amps anymore, but this thing can drive anything. And I've got an extra little braided cable like the one with my headphones to go with this as an interconnect. But the headphone out's so good on the Arturia that I've not found myself needing it. Yeah. Tracking drums in our rehearsal space, it's super difficult to hear what the drums actually sound like, even though I have these sound headphones that cancel out like 30 dB. Yeah, headphones don't cut out nearly as much as you think they do. The over-ear ones, even the Vic Firth ones, are not amazing for that. What I do when I'm tracking drums is I have in-ear monitors in, and then I put ear defenders over the top. You know, the ones that you use when you go clay pigeon shooting or when you're on a construction site. And that between them blocks out something like 60 decibels. You're never really going to be able to hear what the drums sound like in real time, though, because you are literally hitting a thing. You're getting a blast of the low end from it, all that kind of stuff. You're not going to be able to do that. What you have to do, make sure your drums are properly tuned, which isn't something that you can hear the difference with on a microphone any more than you can in the room. If your drums are in tune or out of tune, you should be able to know that. So if you don't, practice that. Beyond that, search YouTube for different ways to tune drums as well, because there are different ways to tune drums to get different things out that might not necessarily sound the best acoustically, but sound better mic'd up. Beyond that, what I tend to do is I'll mic up a kit, and if I'm doing a video, like a video where I have to play drums for that, I will mic everything up where I expect it to. I will record a 10-second, 20-second clip. I'll then stop and then play that back without actually playing the drums. Solo each part, listen, see if there's any resonances, anything wrong. I use TuneBot to tune my drums. Right, don't. Stop that. Tune to a note, because tuning, automated tune like drum dials and tune bots, no, they're not great. I've always had mixed results using things like drum dials. I'm just kidding. Is it TuneBot? Because it's actually using pitch. Oh, that's cool. Okay, that's nice. Yeah, drum dials not so good. TuneBots, I've not actually used that particular one, but yeah, that's cool. But yeah, you definitely want to be tuning your drums to specific pitches. You decide what the pitches are based on each drum and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, from an engineer's point of view, you can't be playing drums and trying to hear them at the same time. You just can't. What you have to do is play a bit, stop it, review it. You don't need a control room, you just need good headphones. I can monitor what good drums sound like on headphones. I've just learnt what good drums sound like, and then I work towards that. So if a kick drum sounds good on the headphones but has too much woofiness or low end, that's not good. Too much is not good. So then I think, okay, well, physics, if I move the mic around from here to here, what change will this give me? I then have an educated guess of what that's going to do. I then record another 10-second little clip, play that back. I do this all the time when I'm alone in the studio and I'm recording things like guitar cabinets as well. I put a microphone on the guitar cabinet exactly where I think it should be. I then close the doors and go back into the live room and play a little bit, then stop and listen back, because you hear things about engineers saying, oh, I get the junior engineer to have headphones on whilst moving a mic in front of a guitar cab until it sounds right. How the heck is that engineer going to know if it sounds right in the headphones with 100 decibels of guitar cabinet blasting their face? There's just not enough differentiation between the real sound and what's coming through the headphones, no matter how much isolation you have, because the low end is going to hit you in the chest, and that's going to distort your perception. So, yeah, in any context, what I do is record a bit. Even if I'm using a DI, I record a section of something. Even if it's a bass DI or a guitar with a virtual amp, I record a bit. Then I go back and listen to it whilst I'm not playing, because then my engineer brain is focused. I have the ability then to not be focusing on the playing for a minute, and I can get my objectivity back. So yes, that is how you have to do things, and it's long-winded and it's annoying. So, well, if that's what you do now, then there is no better way of doing it. Just from here, I mean, yeah, you're never going to hear what the drums actually sound like on headphones whilst you track. That's just physics, unfortunately. All you can do is get used to that sound in the headphones. through the microphones being fed back to you, and just kind of accept that whilst you play. Because even if things were EQ'd perfectly in the headphones, as soon as you start actually playing those drums, physics gets in the way, and the doubling up and crossing over of frequencies means that it's going to be reinforced by things that you don't want. And if you then try and EQ the drums in the headphones to sound right in concert with the actual drums, if you then try and play that back, that will sound absolutely horrible. And that's a problem with any kind of sound reinforcement. Quite often I'll do live sound mixing for small venues, and I'll mic up a drum kit, and what I'll end up with that comes out of the PA system combined with the sound of the actual drum kit sounds really nice. But if you were to put some really isolating headphones on and listen to the mixing desk for what the drums were, they'll sound absolutely disgusting, because they'll be missing a key element, and that key element is the actual acoustic drums adding to that sound. Unfortunately, physics is a cruel beast. And so, yeah, doing them at the same time is difficult. So, yeah, sorry to be the bearer of bad news there. But it's just one of those things that it's practically impossible to get a good reading of a loud instrument whilst being in the same room as it. So what I do, is I record little clips, make sure everything's in tune, sounds right, make sure it sounds right, then I can start tracking and just trust the process. As long as I can hear by picking out what everything is, I just have to trust the process. That's what it is. Generally speaking, when I'm tracking drums, I do tend to have a lot more overheads coming through the headphones than I do the close mics, actually. That's just me. But I don't have them quite heavily compressed. But then my headphones are relatively not loud, because then that lets the other tracks breathe over the top of them. But I'm not the world's best drummer. I'm more engineer than drummer by a long shot. So, yeah, I only ever really play drums in the studio when I have to, because I don't have a drummer at hand. Anyway, I've got a version of the song to send to the band now. So I've probably got half an hour or so to look at the other song, which is Happiness. So we'll be coming back to these songs later in the album's mix cycle. There we go, that's finally got rid of all those tracks. And let's find it. It's in my Dropbox, mixes for 2020. I'm doing this off screen, of course. And where are ye? Banana Ranch 2020 album. Happiness stems. I've got synth MIDI. Okay. This is going to be fun. So I'm going to bring these in at bar 4, separate tracks. Tempo should have been 150, but I'm going to grab these synths and try and stick these in at the same place. Import tempo map. Yep, import tempo map. Yes, separate tracks. And see what Lemon's life has given to me. So from here, everything's playing back. Oop, they've accidentally started playing back at a 1.25 rate, so that's going to sound wrong. So let's make our play rate 1. There we go. And see if that all lines up. It might not.
Here we go, dropping in.
What on earth? Oh, it's kind of a sample. All right.
Here we go, dropping in.
Happiness is everything. For some girls, it's a diamond ring, but
And separately, I did get sent the drum stems. There we go. Which can go on here and maybe line up separate tracks. Let's find out. Lots and lots of WAV files. Out they come. Yes, they do.
Here we go, dropping in.
So they probably should start a couple of bars later.
Here we go, dropping in.
Happiness is everything. For some girls, it's a diamond ring, but you and me.
Lovely. Now here is where I'm going to do a little cheat and make sure that's mixes for 2020. Make sure I'm saving this. Banana Ranch Happiness. And there we go. So, oh, that's copying all the files. Oh, I was sure I'd unticked that box. Ah, well. The link that we have to Discord there should be a forever link. So try that link again. The one that's in chat that Marty has posted, give that a go. I may have sent you a Discord link at some point that was limited time or something like that. But yeah, the link that we have in our chat here will bring you to our Discord server at any time. So, does that just stop? Oh yeah, that will just stop because everything was played back at 1.25 times. At least that's what I hope. Yes, there we go. The rest of the audio is actually there. Good. Yes, it expireth not. Lovely. So we've got our drums there. This all needs colorations. But what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to bring up a new project tab and bring up that song that we did with Aurora Project last week because it's the same drummer. And it's generally speaking, because we talked off air, the same kit, because we really like that kit. I think it's got, I said, let's use a different, more appropriate snare for the song. But generally speaking, the actual kit was really quite nice. Hello, Paul. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. So, this drum group, I'm going to copy these, copy and paste. And all the effects from here, which is what I did on the previous stream. If I copy the effects as well, rather than a track template, then when I paste them, all the routing will be kept. Oh, that was not what I had in mind. So I was trying to copy these tracks. Not an audio file. I don't know what happened there. That was weird. But because you can copy or paste any number of things in Reaper, that may just have been an oddity. Oh, it's panicking, which is usually a good sign. It means it's trying to do something really, really difficult. It's not responding because it's trying to copy an entire drum kit and all the mixing. There we go. And all the effects groups. So I can delete the actual audio out of there, and I can hopefully, which one's ambient center, slightly slowly but methodically move all these up. So, oh yeah, there we go. So that they're all now on the wrong channels because I'm an idiot. So that's kick, snare, rat tom, floor tom, hi-hat. Overheads. They all need to go up. And then the ambient front height goes then the ribbon. So the processing is in the right order. And let's see how this sounds. I'll just get rid of these tracks that have got nothing on them now.
Where? Open
was the black kick as well, which I'll... Was that just audio? That was just... Yeah, that was just audio from the kick drum. Send. Do you get a free Hot Pole t-shirt if you join the Discord? I mean, if you've got a t-shirt maker and want to do that. Yeah, sure. Oh. There we go. So let's just listen to these overheads and ambience. Cool. There we go. So let's just EQ this snare to be quite a lot less pop. And quite a bit more low end, because we don't need a real popcorn, like Deftones style snare now. Unlike the previous song. I might come back to that sample on the kick as well and change that, because that's the kick from Metallica's Black album, which is overkill for this.
Open your eyes and you'll find it there. Oh, you and me, we're without concern. I want to tell the world that we have found it.
Right, the next thing that I've not done yet is trim out the silences, which is something I always do, so let's do that. Silence. Hear the silence. Where did that come from? Like late 90s, early 2000s dance? What's the most Deftones-like band that I've mixed? Oh, that's a good question. I worked with a prog metal band, what were they called? That were like that. That were... come on, brain. Phineas Gage. Band called Phineas Gage. I tracked their entire first EP and produced it. I also did a lot of the engineering, recording, and reamping on the full-length album that they did. So their stuff was heavy-ish. Their drummer was a real machine. Mitchell Goon, I remember his name was. I think that was his name anyway. Pretty sure that was his name. He was... I can't remember what country he was from, because it only ever got mentioned once. I think he was Indonesian, but that's a real stretch of the memory. And he would like fly back to do gigs in his home country, and then he'd come to be with this band and do this real like heavy technical. Brain needs food and drink half an hour ago. Well, that's the story of my life. My brain always needs food and drink. That was earlier. So Phineas Gage was spelt like that in chat. Phineas Gage was the real life man who had a railway spike go through his head and survive. The heaviest band I've recorded with. That's a good question, because I don't get nearly enough heavy stuff coming through the studio. I like working with really heavy brutal metal. And unfortunately, I don't seem to get a lot. I think Manchester's just not got much in the way of super heavy stuff at the moment. And when it does, a lot of the metal guys either, I'll record this at home types, and then they wonder why it sounds bad. So, yeah, there's a lot of that going on at the moment. But yeah, that's I don't know what the heaviest band is that I've worked with, but can't remember the last time I did proper like stuff. It's kind of a shame. Yeah, that is a good point from Oh man, Marty. Also, there's no bass here, so that's the next thing, is that I'm going to be playing the bass on this track very shortly. So I think what we'll do at this point, I'm going to take a 2-minute break, grab a second beer for the stream, make sure that my bass is all set up nicely, and we'll put these in some folders and get a kind of a song structure. I've never heard this song before, and hopefully about 20 minutes from now, I will have played the bass line on it. A gin break. Yes, quite. So I'll see you all back here in a couple of minutes. Get yourselves a drink, do what you gotta do, and I'll see you very shortly. Take care. Okay, I'm back. And now I've got Beavertown's Lupuloid IPA, which is strong as you like, 6.7%. Woo! At the end of that, I will probably already be in bed by the time I've finished drinking that, because that's going to put me to sleep. So, at this point, this song has a lot of guitars by the look of it. So I'm going to change the colour on these to be a particular colour. It's not particularly... Oh, wow, that's bright. But it serves a purpose. So that's what we're going to do. And by putting that there, guitar, bus. That means we've now got These all just need stereo panning, really. And that's all I'm going to do with them for the minute. Yeah, Marty, your beer says 9.2, but you're Dutch. You'll survive. That's normal for you. Right, so none of them start till there, so I can just clean that off. There we go, verse. There we go, let's just pan these all in nicely. And then learn how the song goes. Set. Your whiskey says 40, yeah, but you're probably not drinking it out of 330ml cans. Yeah, drink your whiskey out of cans like this, and let's see how long that lasts. In fact, don't. That's not a good idea. I am not condoning irresponsible drinking. Okay, that's a lot of guitars doing basically a mandolin part. Extra octave and very high octave. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum. Right, so those vocals all need to be a colour so I can see what they are. That's a sample of some kind, and then these brass things, I need to assign instruments to them, but they can wait a little while. Whiskey's always 40%, not 40 proof, Marty. Come on, everybody knows that whiskey is strong. Whiskey together, strong. So, it's time for good old number one. Oh. So, this is where I make it all about me. And make sure there's phantom power going to my DI box. That's a good start. There we go. We have level, ladies and gentlemen. Just gonna pull the camera down a little. He says. Need to really grow my beard out and do a Lee Sklar impression. Saw Lee Sklar at NAMM last year. He was doing an interview right next to where I was, and I was kind of tempted to go over and say hello, but I genuinely didn't have the first clue what I was going to ask him. There we go. Let's pull up a bass channel. And the first thing to do is just listen to a little bit of the song, get a feel for it, and decide things like what kind of tone I want to go for, hand-wise. Whether I want to play with my fingers or whether I want to play with a pick, whether I want to play with the neck pickup, bridge pickup, both. I've got active electronics, I can change the tone even before we start talking about amps. And I'd like to think I'm fairly versatile as a bass player, so my intention here is to suit the song and not for me to just kind of go like bow, 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 and start slappa da bass. Oh, I've got to change my settings a tiny little bit so I make sure that all the ins and outs are registering so that I can have input 3. So there we go. Alright, so this is my bass with this nice John East preamp. Let's just see if I can pull the camera around so you can see a little more. There we go. So you can see a bit more of what's going on. The bass guy from Davey 504. You mean Davey? Yeah, I play bass a bit. Anyway, let's listen to the song a little bit.
You and me are everything. You're all that I could ever want and more. Oh, happiness is everywhere. Open your eyes and you'll find it there. Oh, you and me, we're without concern. I want to tell the world that we have found it. Happiness, we all need
Yeah, so it's kind of magic chords. So I'm guessing. Let's check my tuning. I think I've tuned to E standard, and let's just make sure that Reaper's tune has a window size enough to detect low notes. Yeah, so I've tuned. So the song is in G sharp or A flat, depending on your perspective. If I was tuned to E flat, which I usually am, that would be a little easier to play, but I'm just going to stick with what I've got now because it's fine. So that's... So I want to go somewhere indie rock Ramones-ish. So even though I'm using a jazz bass, this is both pickups. This will be both pickups. There we go. Come on. So... it's better in 4/6 reggae style with fingers. Now this song, I don't know, because I could change the fingers and go. Now, this song sounds to me like it could do with a fairly driven SVT Ampeg with a suitable cabinet on the top. So let's go with, come on, where are you? Ampeg SVX, SVT Classic. I'm just going to choose the amp from here. SVT Classic's the only one I've bought. Overdrive, you say? Oh, I can add a little bit of overdrive. Let's just get this. There we go. I wasn't going to add a ton of overdrive, to be honest. That cab's terrible. That's because it's a guitar cabinet, probably. Yeah. Make sure there's nothing on here that shouldn't be. There we go. I'm going to switch entirely to the neck pickup. That's now farting like a gym bro that's had his protein supplements. So I'm going to add 2 notes wall of sound. And this is where a cabinet comes in. So I'm going to link these two and go for a bass cab. 8x10. I'm going to go with the Brit Fridge, which is one of my cabs, and see how this sounds. Oh, let's turn the output down a bit, but still. It's being hit a bit too loud. And I'm going to change that from the D112 to a 421. Add a little bit of overload on there because that makes it react more dynamically. And now I can push some treble and a bit of mids on this amp to make it grind a bit. Yeah, there we go. And that's with my EQ on my bass still flat, so I'm just going to add a little high end on the bass. that is a classic kind of American rock, that's the sound of kind of alternative American rock. So let's...
Here we go, dropping in.
Happiness is everything. For some girls it's a diamond ring, but you and me are everything. You're all that I could ever want and more. Oh, happiness is everywhere. Open your eyes and you'll find it there. Oh, you and me, we're without you. I want to tell the world that we have found it.
Okay, I am clipping the life out of that, so if that's distorting on your end, I do apologise. I'm just going to bring that down. If Wall of Sound doesn't sound right, it's not Reaper. Reaper doesn't affect the sound of it. It can be a little tricky getting a sound that you like out of Wall of Sound at first, but that's just a perspective thing. You've got to pick a cab you want, then make sure the sides are linked. I personally usually like to have 2 microphones on a guitar cabinet, but on a bass I'm quite happy with just a 421. Can really take a lot of mid-range out of this. Bass run, yeah. I do like to do bass runs, although when I'm actually being serious and recording, I tend to be a bit more conservative. But when I'm testing tones, I do like to mess around with that. I'm going to put the ultra low in here, and that's going to change this tone quite a lot. So that's... Yeah, and let's just try the other Britfridge cabinet, which is the one with the tweeter in. This is suddenly going to have a lot more high end. Yeah, to all you bass players out there, learn your scales and that kind of stuff. It's boring. It's really boring. But when you've done it, you can do things like that. Like not having your camera straight. Not having your camera straight is cool. But being able to do scales means that your runs go... and so on and so forth. And being able to dance around the scales can make for such a much more interesting bass line. This now sounds a bit muffled. I can probably even push the treble harder on this. There we go. These are brand new strings as well, so it's not a dullness on the strings. There we go. Let's just try. So I've just switched from the neck pickup only to both pickups, so I can push the gain a bit now because the harmonics get a bit subdued on a jazz bass when you do that. I do like stuff like Less Than Jake. Roger from Less Than Jake is ridiculous, where he's got like that kind of... Yeah, that's very Roger from Less Than Jake. Love it, but it's just blah. That's the word. What happens if I turn the volume down and take the pad off? Does it sound clearer? You can play more than the root note, yes. In fact, if you want to get really clever, you can start going... But that's getting real like over most bass players' heads, let's be honest. For every bass player that we have who's got some savvy, there's another 3 or 4 who don't. Did bypass that other cab, didn't I? Yeah, I did. So let's hear how this song goes now.
Here we go, dropping in.
Right, so it is literally just for the start. That's starting on our chord. 1, 2, 3. Oop. Remember your fretboard, people. Very rare that I play in G sharp. But yeah, it's literally just 16th notes, but sliding up to a fourth. From a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
Here we go, dropping in.
Happiness is everything.
Right, so that's fine up to there. Oh, and then I'll drop in. And it sounds like it's those 4 chords. So it's root note, minor third, 6th, 4th. But I'm supposed to change a note and a half before the next bar. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Yeah, that's what the guitars are doing, so I'm going to match them.
Happiness is everything. For some girls it's a diamond ring, but you and me are everything. You're all that I could ever want and more. Oh, happiness, it's everywhere. Open your eyes and you'll find it there. Oh, you and me, we're without concern. I want to tell the world that we have found it. Happiness, we all need happiness.
Right, so at that point, I don't know how it goes. Let's have a listen.
We all need happiness. We all need happiness.
So it's
Happiness. We all need happiness. You and
oh,
you and happiness.
so it's that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Bass practice piece. Oh, the hornpipe. Oh, I love playing Sailor's hornpipe on bass because you get all your chord stuff in. I used to play in a ska band, and that would be my warm up. Was that? And I haven't played it in forever, so I'm a little rusty. But and play that in different keys at different places and find, because like I noticed that I was playing that in A there, I had to force my hand down. But yeah, that yeah, I used to play a lot of 6-string bass, and that's the kind of thing you really have to do to get used to the wider neck. You find yourself going up and down strings more rather than sliding round, and it changes your perspective quite a lot. Oh, trying to hit record whilst not having my hands on the fretboard. I need more notice than that because that's where it changes.
I want to tell the world that we have found it. Happiness. We all need happiness. Happiness. We all need happiness.
Oh, I moved too early.
I want to tell the world that we
And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4.
We all need happiness. Happiness. We all need happiness. You and me, we're like my
Right, so then there's another section. Lots of different sections. Yay!
You and me, we're like Mercury. Raining and stars is our destiny, but happiness is what we'll bring. I want to tell the world that I have found it. You and me, we're like Mercury. Raining and stars is our destiny, but happiness is what we'll bring. I want to tell the world that I have found it. We're like we all.
Right, so it's relative minor, major, 2nd, 5th, then relative minor, root, 2nd, 4th. Repeat.
We all need happiness.
And a 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. And there's a second verse there. Just clean up my edit a little bit. I did have the view so it looked a little bit weird there, so I couldn't quite see the bass. But I don't need to see the bass because I'm playing it. I need to see where the guitar sections start and end. So this looks like it's exactly the same length as the first verse, but I think I can get a little bit more flowery with it this time. Oh, yeah, this is that section where it goes to the and this bit goes a little differently. Alright. So this isn't just the twice round now. Cool. And I'm just doing rough bass edits there, and I'll neaten them up later by ear, but for now it's just to make sure when we play it back I'm hearing the right thing. Oh, looks like I've done an edit fail over here somewhere. So let's just bring that back. There we go. It's close enough for the time being. As long as all the audio is in the right place, then editing can be done later. So this second. Right, so that is just going to be stop, and let the guitar take that so the bass drops out underneath. So there's a bit of a weird stop there. Like it. Right, so this is where I can really have a little bit of a show-off moment. So it's... Let's just make sure it... Right, so the last time at the end is... So I need to remember that so that if I'm going a bit crazy, I know where my end point is. Let's see if I can do this in one take, shall we? Because this is going to be fun. I can see, yeah, where it's going to change, so I should probably give you that as well. So from the dra-ba-ba-dra-ba, how does it go? Dra-ba-ba-dra, go. Right. Ah, no, fluffed it. Oh, it's going from... Yeah, so I want to be going from that G sharp major Oh, it's because it's in F the way that I'm playing it. I mean, yes, it's in... No, it is. It's actually in F. Yeah. Well, it's in F as the relative minor. Anyway, I'm getting confused. Let's go. Right, so not bad. A couple of fluffs in there. Let's drink another bit of this beer and that'll fix it. Nice and clean, Adam. Come on. There we go. Yeah, throwing in things going from relative minors to majors is always a bit of a finger twister. Especially as I'm literally making this up as I go along. Hey! There we go. That's got it. That's got the badger. So, if you weren't already aware before this stream, ladies and gentlemen, I play bass. And yes, me and Glenn have already had that conversation. Is I am a dyed-in-the-wool walking cliche of a bass player. I actually have, you know, the bass clef. Yeah, genuine walking cliche bass player right here. But I do change my strings regularly, and I do weird stuff like this. Which, you know, trying to do it appropriately and tastefully is the real challenge. Anyway, that brings me to 11 o'clock, and for the sake of my physical well-being, and I'm sure a lot of you are tired by now after a 3-hour stream, that is where we're going to call it for this evening, because now I've got all the parts for this song to work with, and I'm going to have to neaten them up on the next stream. But then we can go through the mix process for Happiness. I'm going to have a night off tomorrow night. I've got a lot of off-stream stuff that I need to do.
And yes, so Maximum Derpson, thank you so much for checking out the course. I'm really glad you enjoyed the Reaper course. And one last time before we go, the Reaper course is not currently on like a special sale, but I'll tell you what is this course from my friend Scott. Scott from Chernobyl Studios. He is absolutely brilliant. And his course, which is all about, all about how to get great sounds out of virtual guitar amps as a method, is something that's really worth checking out, and is currently on sale through Pro Mix Academy, same place that my course is, and is on sale, and there's a link in the description. If you use it, then it's an affiliate link. I get a bit of help there as well, so if it's something you're interested in, by all means check that out. And yes, so we will be picking up this stream. What day is it? Whoa, you boy, what day is it? It's Christmas Day, sir. Probably Friday. Yeah. So yeah, if you haven't already given the video a like and subscribe to the channel, please do. We have a Patreon, which is what helps support the channel to do more stuff like this, and in return you get early access to any videos that we've got that are going to go up live. If you join the Discord server and you're a Patreon, you get like a special little badge, and there's an extra section where we can add you to have me listen back to mixes for critiques, stuff like that, so we can help you sound as good as you possibly can. And so last thing for tonight is to just say thank you, everybody. Tune in same time as this stream on Thursday, 8 PM, for the Hop Pole Position, which is our weekly news podcast, where me and Liam talk about everything that's happened in music tech and guitar news and all that wonderful nerdy stuff. It's about an hour long of a program, and it's live, and it's on YouTube and the other platforms. And hopefully I look forward to seeing you all there. So yes, back to work or whatever it was you were doing, everybody. And I'll see you all later on. Cheers.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.